Capital K Knitting Podcast. This is a knitting podcast, so if you're here for that, welcome. I'm so excited that you've joined me today. I want to be able to share the finished projects that I've made in April and the things that I've worked on in April, even though they might not be finished, works in progress. And we're going to be chatting about some other things at the end, about dreams and things that I want to cast on. And then if you are unfamiliar with, where to find things, my Ravelry pages and any links to shops that you might want to look at are in the description box below. I'm not sponsored by anyone. I don't get paid for this. This is just something I really like to do. And with that, we can move on in. Oh, and I'm here in Indiana. I know some people like to know where I'm at, with my husband, my 4 kids, and our puppy Ranger. So yeah, let's get started. I'll show you guys the finished projects for this month. I have a couple of failures that I redeemed in different ways, so I'll show those to you first just for fun because they're in the same category. So these are a pair of mittens. Look at that yarn. Oh my goodness, I love it so much. So good. This is almost the last of this yarn, which is why they are mittens. They were meant to be socks. So I often knit my socks 2 at a time, concurrently on 2 different 9-inch needles, which you'll see later with different socks. So I had, them with these great cuffs, and I got to here on both of them and realized obviously I would not have enough for the rest of a cuff down sock. So instead of doing shorties and like cutting in afterthought heels or something, which I'm not really a fan of true afterthought heel. Well, let me clarify. I am a fan of true afterthought heels. However, I like to reinforce my heels more than just that afterthought heel. I like it to be bigger than that. So if I wasn't planning on doing an afterthought heel, I know some people do a forethought heel where you have waist yarn in there. But if I wasn't planning on doing that, then I wouldn't have the reinforcement that I want from that, if that makes sense. So this was going to be a broken rib sock. Look at that texture. Oh my goodness. Oh, I love it so much. And then I got to the end and realized, oh, this isn't going to be enough. So I put in some afterthought thumbs instead, and these are just really nice. They're the fingering weight, obviously, because I was doing some fingering weight socks, or I was trying to, and they're a little bit small for an adult, so I think I'm going to gift them to one of my nieces and nephews. I might also use some yarn to make a little I-cord thing to connect them so you could put them through the sleeves of a jacket. So this is going on the gift pile. I've done a few different projects with this yarn because I got a whole 100-gram skein, and also I've used her, this is the We Don't Talk About Bruno colorway, obviously with the greens and the grays and everything. And then there's another one that I got that was called Surface Pressure, which was this blue with like these rusty bits in it. And they're both beautiful, and they're merino cashmere nylon blend. So there's just a bit of cashmere and a bit of nylon in there to give it some strength and some softness, and I really, really love it. So I have the teensiest bit left that I'm putting in the toes of some scrappy socks. So I am going to be using every single bit of this up. The cuff, is it still a cuff if it's around your wrist? Cuff? Yes, the cuffs on these are from some minis that were gifted to me from a friend. We did a swap in a Discord group that was is not my own, but I'm part of it and I absolutely love it. So it's actually this fade. So it's goes like, I think like this. Oh, maybe like that. There's just so many pieces. They're so pretty. Ah! Here we go. Like this maybe? Like that. Isn't that so beautiful? This purple one's longer for some reason. I don't know if it's more, but this black one goes on the end, right? So it goes like that. And I thought that would go well with this green. I'm planning on putting those together in a couple of projects because they're all 10 gram minis, and of course you can get more than one thing out of that if you want to. So that's the first thing. I started them with 64 stitches because I thought they were going to be socks. So I just did a 2x2 rib. I did a long tail cast on with a 2x2 rib, and then did a 1x1 broken rib until I got to here. And then I did essentially a wedge toe there, and then did afterthought thumbs on there. And yeah, so those are all done, and it is really satisfying to use up that yarn because I've had it for a long time, and that's part of the whole no buy, low buy thing for me, is that I have time to enjoy things that I've already purchased for projects that I know I would really like. So the second redeemed failure is actually some dyed yarn. I had this idea to do botanically dyed yarn because spring isn't really my season. I really love it when the earth wakes up. Like, it's beautiful. My mental health is totally different. And but at the same time, I don't feel super connected to what is happening in the calendar, if that makes sense. I really love the holiday season. I really love the fall, the autumn. That really is wonderful. I've started falling more in love with summer because going outside with my kids is just so easy in the summer. But the spring is always like this weird, awkward time for me where I feel like, honestly, I'm decluttering a lot of things, both tangible and metaphorical. And I thought maybe botanically dyeing some yarn would help me like connect a little bit more with this season. And so I looked up these videos about it. I'll put links to them below so that you can watch them because they are good information. But the very first step of knowing how much plant matter to put in with your yarn, I only had as much as I had. I only had these flowers basically, and I thought, well, I'll just put in everything in there, and if it's just a very light, difference, if it's a very pale dyed yarn, I'll be satisfied with that. That's fine. So I took all this video of me doing it, and then at the end of it, and it took me like 3 days to do all the steps and everything, and by the end of it, it looked exactly the same. Exactly the same. And I was like about to cry in the kitchen, and my husband said, well, what if you just like dyed it with food coloring? And I stood there and thought, what the heck? So I just very not expertly and willy-nilly just like poured food coloring in these dye baths. Because the yarn was already mordanted, and like it was already wet, and it was already hot, and so I was just like, you know what, we'll just do that. That would be fun. So after washing them and rinsing them, this is what stayed. And so I just tried to stay with the colors of the flowers that I was trying to use for this. So this one was in a tulip dye bath. So I put just red in there and not very much of it, so it would come out pinky. And then this one is for the violets that we had, We picked so many. They're such little flowers, and we picked so many. And there's that. And then this one was for the dandelions. And I think this one is my favorite. I like them all, honestly. And even after finishing them and washing them, and like washing them a few times actually, because I had to wash it a few times for the color to stop running, but it took me a while to be excited about it or okay with it. I was just really disappointed that it didn't work how I wanted it to. And so that's all right though. These are beautiful, and they can remind me of that funny time where I totally failed at botanically dyed yarn. So this is my not so botanically dyed yarn. I mean, there's flower essences in there. I'm sure they were in there. This yarn was in there for a while. But yeah, I am very excited about it. This is also very soft yarn, and it's a sock yarn. It's Knit Pick Stroll undyed yarn, and I think it's a 75-25 merino nylon base. So it's just so soft. It's very, very nice. I like it a lot. So I'm excited to use this though. I have gotten past being disappointed and now I'm just looking at the colors and really liking them. I am not sure what I'm going to be making with all of it. I know I probably want a pair of socks with this. This is just really fun. But I am still thinking about what to do with the other ones, because since I'm not in any way a professional dyer, they're not even. Like the skeins, the variegation in the skeins is just not going to be even at all. So with this one, you can see that inside is mostly gray. So there's a lot of variation out here, but on the inside, it's just mostly gray. So that's a little bit, what do I want to say? Mysterious about what will happen. I'm sure some of you know what will happen. I think what I will find is that the first project I make with them will be very purpley and blue, and then the second project will probably be mostly gray. So I believe also this one is better on it, but it's got a lot of paler places on the inside there. That's not so bad. I thought it was going to be worse. That's not so bad. It's pretty, oh, there we go. Yeah. So, and I won't open the yellow one up for you just because it's probably the same. I actually haven't looked inside the yellow one. I'm afraid, because it's my favorite one and I don't want it to be bad. So, but obviously while I skein them up, I'll find out the truth about them. So that is number 2. The other projects went swimmingly and turned out exactly how I had hoped. Well, mostly exactly how I had hoped. So, third finished object is this pair of socks. I just finished these the other day. I'm very happy with them. This is, let me grab the tag. This is Nomadic Yarns, and it is in the Tweety sock base, in the color Skinny Love, which I think is a reference to coffee, like skinny coffee. But this is a contrast heel and pattern scroll in the colorway Flax. I just had that left over. I often have that in Flax and the coal colorway because I just find they match different things when necessary. So I got them to match on the top. They're very well matched there. Oh, come on. They're very well matched there. But on the bottom, I found on this one that my yarn had been cut about right about here on this bluish purple stripe. And so because I had to basically weave in two ends there, so I lost a little bit of that stripe, my toes don't match. So I have a cream toe and then I have a little bit of a gold toe there. But these were great. These are also a 64 stitch circumference. I did a 1x1 on this one, and just my standard tread heavy heel. That just carries the reinforcement through the heel turn in down here, and I end mine at the end of the gusset, and then I reintroduce it again at the ball of the foot there. So, and I think that'll be really good for this pair because I'm sure you noticed on the tag for these that there's no nylon content in the main yarn, which I often don't do for socks, but I am curious as to how they will hold up. And that is my 5th pair of socks for myself that I've ever made. I've made loads and loads of socks. I think over 30 pairs of socks at this point, and only 5 of them have been for me. So there we go. That is really nice though, to be creating more things for myself. That's been really fun this year. I'm going to put a picture of the second pair of socks that I finished up. These were for my niece, Yiska. She's just such a dear heart. I had given her some hand-me-down socks from my girls that I knit that had not been worn out, because of course children grow out of socks rather quickly. And she was very upset because they'd been over-dried and so they shrunk, and I didn't understand the right yarn really to use at the time for socks when I made those, and so but then I forgot what kind of yarn I had used and gave them to someone else, and so when I saw them shrunken like that, I thought, oh right, oh no, that's no good. She was very upset because she loved wearing them, and so I said, I would love to make another pair of socks for you here, and I sent her a little video message of the colors that I had in my stash, and I said, which one would you like me to make them from? And so she chose the Opal Van Gogh. Of course, you can see this one is Starry Night, that these colors are inspired by Starry Night. And it was my first time using Opal yarn, and I must say I'm a fan. I get the hype. It's a sturdy yarn. You get a lot for what you pay for it. I think it's a really good commercial yarn, and I like the way it patterns up. I think I prefer self-striping yarn, but this is fun. This is fun to watch, like, how it patterns up. So I used an undyed Knit Pick Stroll, like the very, very last of what I used for these, for the heels, toes, and cuffs. In fact, I ran out of my last bit on the heel flap of the second sock, and so before I dyed any of this up, I took some off and measured it so that I would have enough for the last bit of that heel flap and for the second toe. And I measured it exactly, guys. I had exactly what I needed for that toe. I thought I was gonna run out, but it worked. I had just enough to Kitchener it and to have an end to weave in, and so it was perfect. I dropped those off at her house on Sunday because I was in town where she lives, and I thought it would be nice for her to have them sooner than later. Now, because they were for her and she has these little feet, I started the sock at 64 stitches for the rib, and then I increased it to 65 stitches after the rib, and did a 4x1 ribbed leg. On the first sock, it was every 11th row, and on the second sock, I did it wrong and did it every 10th row. So the second sock's leg is just a little bit shorter than the first one. Until I got down to 60 stitches, I decreased a stitch in the rib, and then I did a heel flap and gusset with a tread heavy heel, and then did the foot and my contrast toe, and I always do a rounded toe. And it's just it just fits her. Like, if it were any bigger, they would be a little big. So I'm glad to say that, like, it's a good sock. It's a ribbed sock, so there's going to be negative ease widthwise, but then lengthwise she has more time to have even more negative ease as she grows. So that's good. And this one may be my favorite. This is kind of my coup de grace to this time. And this is called the Forest Illumina cowl. I love it so much. It's so beautiful. It's still the tiniest bit damp, and I have had it drying for several days, but as you can see, there's a lot of color work. It's double thick just in and of the just because it's a tube, but then there's layers of yarn inside it, so it takes a minute to dry out. There are parts of this cowl that you're supposed to do some duplicate stitch, like in the wings of this moth situation, and then where's the other part here? And then you're supposed to do more duplicate stitch for more flowers here with the fox. Can I hide my eyes and maybe you'll see better? There. And then you're supposed to do duplicate stitch over these acorn tops, but I just did those the way that I just did it as stranded color work. I didn't do any duplicate stitch over that. There's also supposed to be duplicate stitch over this set of trees and over this set of trees, because they're supposed to have like Christmas ornament stuff on them, but I didn't really want that. I wanted it just to be more of a forest theme. It makes total sense that the pattern says that, because it was a Christmas pattern for an Advent set, which had all these colors in it. Now, all of the colors that I used are from my stash, except for the black. I had to buy more of the black because I ran out, but I knew that was going to happen when I started it. I absolutely love this cowl. It was a joy to make. I especially love the moon phases motif. I really like that a lot. And it's a really good, it's a really good size, I feel like. It's thick enough that it can come up here, and it's wide enough to go over my head, but it stays here, you know, it stays around my neck. And if I had a coat on, it's just gonna stay here, and I can even like get under it. And one of the things I like about the ones with the twist in them is you can have it here under your chin, or you can put it back under your hair, right? So that, and then have it like this. So it was very nice. This whole thing is very nice. I really like all the motifs. I might make another one. I've been thinking about it, but make it so that I'm doing the color work instead, just doing it as stranded color work instead of doing any duplicate stitch at all. My duplicate stitch just isn't very tidy. It's kind of messy, and because I used a variation of fingering weight and DK weight with this project, it just wasn't turning out the way I thought it would when I was doing the duplicate stitch. Surprisingly, the stranded color work was totally fine with the DK weights that I added in there. Also, the only place where I think I have a tension problem is here with the morel mushrooms. You can see it kind of comes in there. I was getting excited to be done, actually. And let me show you. The biggest modification I made to this is I kind of added my own chart here. So in between these mushrooms and this branch motif is supposed to be other mushrooms. And I did them the way that it was suggested to do them. I did the color work and then I did the duplicate stitch over them. And it's just very, can I have it focus? It's just very messy. Like you can see the stitches over the other stitches. And I thought at first, like, oh, this is the problem, is that she's having me do different colors over other colors instead of just over the background color. But then when I went to do the flowers over the background color with the foxes, I realized maybe I'm just not very good at that. So I cut this out and Kitchenered it back together. So what you have is you have a provisional cast on, right? And then you go through all of it, do all the things, and then you do a twist and then you graft it together. So that way you are putting this line together, right? Because you start with this. But I Kitchenered it together and then I cut right above the mushrooms here and or the toadstools here and then took out kind of the glowing mushrooms there. I was going to put in flowers instead, but when I started with the flowers, I didn't like them. So I just left their stems and leaves there and it just looks kind of like foresty leaf stuff. So I left it. Like I said, I used all stash stuff for my accent colors, and this was another one of the minis that I got in the fade there. There are some leftover sock yarns, and the DK yarn that I used yellow, gray, and orange were all DK. But the rest of it was fingering weight yarn. And I am so excited to have this project done, first of all, because it's beautiful and I really liked wearing it. I finished it on my birthday, and so I didn't even black it. I just wore it on my birthday, and it was really nice to have because it was really windy. And I kept telling my husband during that day, I was like, I'm going to wear this every day. I'm going to wear this every day. This is so nice. And he just kept saying, you know, that line from Emperor's New Groove. It's my birthday gift to me. But it was. I know, it's silly, but it did feel like a birthday gift from past me because I'd been working on it so much. And I will be excited. I think it'll be dry tomorrow, hopefully. And I'll be excited for that, to just be able to put it in the rotation of knit accessories now. Now that was 5 finished objects, and heavens above, I haven't come to you with 5 finished objects in a very long time. So I'm trying my darndest not to cast on all the things right now because I still have more things on my needles that I'd like to finish before I cast everything on. I do have a couple that I don't think you've seen, but I'm really trying to stick with the plan because I know that will help me feel better about my projects. Having them be finished somewhat in the order that I cast them on is nice for my brain. So the first one here is the mandolin cardigan. I have never done a bottom up sweater before, and I have enjoyed this very, very much. I think the last time you guys saw this, all I had was a bunch of ribbing on the bottom. But I have so enjoyed the lace work. We've been watching Star Trek Discovery, and I know that I can get a half a chart repeat done in the amount of time that we watch that in the evening. So this is pretty much due to that. I have my armholes here, the split for that, and this comes down below my butt, so it's going to be really nice to have. I still have to do the sleeves and I still have to do the collar, but the main part of this is done, And I know that this is going to be a really great thing to be wearing in the spring. This is a woolly, don't be confused. This is woolly and it's very nice. But of course with the lace work in there, which is beautiful. Look at that. Look at that. It's so good. And it's all the way, it's everywhere. This is an all over lace situation here. So I can see it, like I can see the lace pattern and I see how it looks like what it's supposed to look like, but I'm actually really excited to get it blocked out because I think it'll be way more apparent at that point. I have one more 250 gram skein left, and so I know that I will definitely have enough for the rest of my, the rest of my first, sorry guys, sleeve here. I just started on the first sleeve, and then the collar. I have no idea how much yarn that's gonna use. I'm assuming the collar is gonna take between 75 and 100 grams. I did a shawl collar on a sweater that I steeked recently, and I don't think it's as, I think what I knit before on the steeked cardigan was wider than the shawl collar that's called for this, but that one goes maybe to just past the top of my hip bone, and this one obviously is longer than that, so it's going to take more to go back and forth for that shawl collar. So I'm really interested to see how much yarn I'll have left. I'm confident that I do have enough, but I don't know what I'll be left with when it's done. So I am curious about that. I do have to wind this up so that I can continue using it. This is Cascade Yarns Eco Wool. It's 100% Highland wool, Peruvian Highland wool. And it is 250 grams per, so it's 478 yards per 250 grams. I'm knitting this, I think, on a 6mm, which is a US 10. I believe the pattern calls for a US 9, but to get gauge, I went to a US 10. I can feel it is close to being done, and my goal for April was to get all 3 sweaters that I have on my needles to the sleeves. Of course, with a bottom-up sweater, to get to the sleeves is more work than to do it with a top-down sweater. So at first I had told myself I just needed to finish the body and get to like the sleeve separation part here, but I was too excited. I just kept going until I got to that attachment of the shoulders there. Also, I love being at the point in a project where there's kind of a standalone piece where there aren't any live stitches on this anymore. That's kind of fun. I'm knitting the 53-inch size, the finished chest circumference size, because I have a 40-inch bust, and so that will give me the recommended ease for this sweater. The sleeve circumference size for the 53-inch bust, I wasn't sure if that would work well for me. My arm is usually it needs a looser sleeve than what is recommended in the pattern, so I went a 1/2 inch longer, which is the next size up for the sleeve separation, but of course that's very easy to do with a sleeve hole that you're just like measuring as you go. Whereas if you were doing like a top-down sweater and you're trying to figure out the stitch counts for the next size up and what that circumference would be eventually. You don't really have to do any math with this bottom up thing. You can just keep measuring it and then double it, and that'll be your sleeve circumference. So that's nice. And then I did reach sleeve separation for my champagne cardigan. I am really digging this green. It's a lovely color. It is shepherd's wool in the color blue spruce. So it's supposed to look like the trees, the spruce trees. And I barely got to the sleeve separation here. You can see I've got just a few rows there, rounds there underneath the sleeve separation. I think what I'm going to do, because I have this, which I think is about 50 grams, I think I'm going to save this for, I'm going to do the sleeves in all green, and then I'm going to see where I stand. I'd like to also do the button band in green, but of course you have to finish the rest of the sweater before you can do the button band for that. I'm not sure. Yeah, what my dream is that I would have the top part and the sleeves in green, and then have the button band all in green, so that if I need to do the bottom in some other color, I can do that, and that's fine. I have other yarn that I could kind of color block it with. But I don't really know how to do the math about what I would need for the button band. I was thinking maybe 50 grams would be enough, but of course that all depends on how long the sweater ends up being. So I'm going to have to learn more things before I can do that effectively. Or just do it on a wing and a prayer. I don't know. I have this, and then I have 200 more grams of this green. I also have more shepherd's wool in different colors. I have it in kind of a mustardy yellow that I think would be pretty with it. And then I have, I think that's it. So that's probably what I'll do. But I am not sure, how I'm going to be monitoring how much I would need for that button band. I'm probably going to read through the pattern and see if she has any other tips for it, or read through project pages and see how much people used if they had like contrast button band or something. But I'm really not sure how well that's going to go. I'm doing this on, I think, 4mm needles. Yes, I'm doing these on 4mm needles to get gauge. And I'm also, you'll see that I've kind of connected it in the round here in the front. So I did all the V-neck stuff that I was supposed to do, and then I put it in the round here. I didn't do that with the mandolin cardigan because I started it bottom up, and then I was just reading the chart the way that I was meant to be reading the chart. I'm realizing now that I could have, after finishing the ribbing, I could have joined it in the round and steeked it once it was finished, and then, just done it kind of the inverse way, where I did it in the round until I got to the body of it, where it's doing these different things for the front and the back. But I was having to find time with that, because going back and forth, because the stitch pattern is equal purls and knits no matter what side you're on. So it wasn't going to be really saving me any brain power to do that. With this, however, since it's just stockinette, I feel that the fact that I'm going to be picking up a button band anyway, steeking it just makes sense to me. So this is going to be another example of the Steek Your Heart Out knit along that I'm going to be hosting all year long. I have already steeked a previous FO that was a pull over into a cardigan, and I love it, love it, love it so much more now as a cardigan. And I'm still contemplating turning this puppy into a cardigan. And I have more opportunities for steeking in the future, obviously, and this is one that I'm looking forward to. So it being in the stockinette like pattern, like all the way down, right? Pattern. It being in stockinette all the way down means that it would be a lot easier to do in the round for me, and picking up the button band anyway in the pattern means that I'll just be doing my little crochet reinforcement and then cut it and then pick up the edges as if I would be doing it at, as the same way I would have had I knit it flat. So I'm excited about being done with the flat knitting part of this. This is where we were the last time that I talked to you. So we've made some significant progress. I'm going to move this actually so that I can remember that we have made progress. It's helpful to me to see those because sometimes it's disheartening to feel like you're not making any progress. You just are working on this massive fabric for a really long time. So it doesn't feel like we've gotten anywhere, but we are. It's true. We are getting somewhere. Now, I had these cuffs put together last time we talked, basically because I wanted to make sure that I did them. And that's kind of my new thing, is that I cast on the cuffs of the socks that I want to do next so that my sock needles are full, so that I don't cast on different socks, that I am just, so that they're kind of like a queue of socks. Does that make sense? So these are the caramel sauce socks, and they're so pretty. Isn't this lacework really pretty? This is Malabrigo sock yarn in the colorway Sneezy. I think it is a nod to this one of the Seven Dwarfs, obviously, but it just looks like caramel sauce to me. Caramel sauce socks. It looked perfect, and I've had this yarn for over a year at least to knit these socks, and because I've just been obsessed with the newest shiniest thing, I've never done it. And now, because of the No Buy Low Buy, I've cast them on, and I'm so pleased with them. There's part of me that, as I've been sorting through projects that I've wanted to knit for a while and gathering the yarn that I bought to do those projects, that's afraid that I will be disillusioned but when I start them. Like the Alpenglow, which is a beautiful sweater, but I have botched so horribly. I've kind of ruined it for myself. So anyway, I'm not going to talk about that anymore. So so it's been really lovely that I think 99% of the time that I'm remembering what I bought this yarn for and seeing, oh, did I actually buy the pattern? Oh, okay, I did. Let's start that. That it's been lovely. It's been lovely to do that project that has been in my brain for a long time. Of course, I only have one lace repeat here and one cuff on this side, but I've started them, you know, and I am excited to have these as my 6th pair of socks, maybe. I think that will be really nice. And they aren't socks, obviously, that I can just go on autopilot with, at least at this point. The lace chart is not super complicated. There aren't like crazy nifty stitches in there or anything, but it isn't intuitive at this point. It might be later. I don't know, the longer I do it, but I have a feeling I'm going to need to look at the chart for a while before I can just wing it. And that means that these are going to take a while, because usually socks are my like on the go knitting, or while my children are getting settled in bed knitting, and especially in the stockinette portions of the sock. And that's not going to be the case with these. And after much deliberating and, shall we say, strategizing and wondering if it was for me, I have cast on a half and half wrap. Now, some of you might be like, Bethany, what the heck are you doing? You've talked countless times about how vanilla knitting bores you and that it's hard for you to get through. That is true. That is very true. And I am really enjoying this, actually. And here's why. It's not because I've fallen in love with vanilla knitting. I haven't. In fact, I am struggling a little bit with the champagne cardigan because it's vanilla knitting. I think it will go faster now that I'm not working flat anymore, but heavens to Betsy. I was not moving very quickly with that. But here's why I have been enjoying the half and half wrap. I often watch Stephanie of Edible Thoughts Makes podcast. She's just a really lovely person. And also her podcast is really detail oriented, and I really, really like that about her. And she's done multiple half and half wraps, like a lot of people have. And she talks about how that project for her is really helpful because of just the needs of her life, that it's really nice to have a project that you can do while you're waiting for your kids to go to sleep. And it just sounded, she was just like, what she was saying is my life. I'm often sitting in my kids' room waiting for them to fall asleep. They don't like for me to leave. We're just not there yet. I have little kids, and that's fine, but I also would like to have something that I can work on in there. And the light is so low, of course, for them to be able to fall asleep, that I can't do anything complicated. I can't do color work or lace, or I can maybe get away with doing ribbing, maybe. But if I have something that's just knitting, just knit stitches, then I can do that. And so if I have a project that is just stockinette, then great. I can do that, or garter. I can take that in with me. But there have been multiple times where I don't have anything like that on my needles. Everything on my needles is at a transition point, or is something that I wouldn't be able to do in that low light situation. So I just resonated with her so much about how it's really nice to have something that you can work on that's comforting while your kids are just needing things, and you can put it down at any point and know where you are. That's the part that I really appreciate about it, because it's this thing with just a billion short rows, right? You're just doing it every stitch. You go back, move your stitch marker a stitch, go back, move your stitch marker a stitch, and go back. So, and this is a free pattern. So if you're wondering like, why is she giving out the secret sauce about this? It's because it's not a secret. You can look up the pattern online on Pearl Soho's website. It's called the Half and Half Triangles Wrap there. And they have a striped version now, and they have two different sizes. They call it big and bigger. I have listened to a lot of people make this shawl, and I chose, I believe the two stitch counts are 190 or 260 that you cast on. 260, 240, maybe. I'm not sure. But I know as I was looking at my yarn that I wanted to use, which is this Goodwill from Pearl Soho. I think these are beautiful. Look at those together. Oh my goodness. I fall in love with them every time. So this one is called Blue Moon, and this one is called Coastline Gray. So honestly, I think it's perfect because it reminds me of the tides and the moon, bringing in the tides and all of that. So very, very poignant. Poignant? Is that what I want to say? Very meaningful to me because the rhythm of nature and how that works is meaningful to me. So I really like this yarn. It's called Good Wool and it's 100% Andean Highland wool. A lot of people have used linen quill, which is also a yarn from Pearl Soho, for that pattern and have loved it, which is great. But this is what I had on hand. I got this in a swap as well. And but the yardage for this is not the same as for linen quill. I think linen quill is over 400 yards per 100 grams. I'll put it on the screen if I can find it. And this one is 383 yards per 100 grams. So I cast on 200 stitches because I heard that if you cast on the biggest one, there's usually a lot left over of the third skein. But if you cast on more than the first one, you'll probably only use 2, right? You'll have less scraps left of the second one. So that's what I'm counting on for this. I'm really excited about getting this wrap done, but I'm also really excited about putting the leftovers into my anthology throw. So it's gonna be good. No, when the project ends, I'll be able to use all of it completely, and that's gonna be really lovely. And also being able to look at it and say that I knit this while my children were falling asleep is just nice for me as a mom. The last thing I wanted to show you today was a new cast on, which is the Look at My Holes pullover, mesh pullover by James N. Watts. I barely have a collar here, but I'm really surprisingly into it. I'm not usually into wholly knitting. I like a denser fabric, if that makes sense. I'm not opposed to drape in any way, but when we're getting into wholly fabric, I'm just usually like, that's cool for you, not my preference, right? But this one I've seen a few times, and every time I've seen it, I've thought, honestly, I bet that's pretty functional because you could wear it in the summer and still have like something cozy on and comforting on. And also I could wear it underneath something and kind of have a base layer. So I think I'm going to knit a long sleeve version because of that. I am knitting it with, this was gifted to me by a friend. It's actually not for, it says it's not for commercial value, that it's a sample of some kind. So I don't even know if this color or anything exists right now. She has connections, so she probably got something early, or I don't know. But this color is called Bloom. It's a lace weight, so it is 798 yards per 100 grams. And it's a 50% merino, 50% silk. Composition, obviously Juniper Moon there, and Findley is the yarn line. And so it is this beautiful green. Whoa. This beautiful green, and of course the silk is what makes it so shiny in there. And I am pairing it with the cashmere that I got from Magpie Fibers, and this colorway is called Tactical. So it's like this. Hey. What?
You did it, do? Huh? hugs and kisses.
I did do hugs and kisses. Should I do it again? Okay, I'll be right there. Excuse that cutest interruption ever. He's back in bed. I am knitting the size large. It is suggested for you to have a 2 inches of positive ease, I believe. But the sizing would give me 4.5 if I used needles that would get me the right gauge. Normally, I need to size up one to get the right gauge. So what I've done is I've gone with the recommended needle size and done the size that would give me 4.5 inches of positive ease instead of the recommended 2. I'm kind of fudging it there, but if it ends up being 0 positive ease, I won't be upset about it. And if it ends up being the 4.5, that's okay. That's all right. It'll be very nice regardless. Also, this feels so bougie to be knitting something that's like half silk and then adding cashmere to it. It's just, I've never had this many fibers mixed together, I don't think, and it's lovely. And I really like the color that's coming up with it. I originally got the cashmere. I bought enough so that I could add it to the shepherd's wool for my champagne cardigan, but I didn't like the color that it was coming up with. I liked the blue spruce yarn on its own better, and so I ended up just putting the cashmere aside to use for something else. And I am glad that this is working so well for it. It's just, it's just this great like mix of olive and sage green there. I really love that. And the lace weight is thin enough that it's not necessarily making it look like marled as it does often when you're using a different color of yarn, like two different colors, 2 different tones together like that. So I'm really, really liking this. I'm just now starting on the actual mesh part of it, so that's gonna be fun. And I'm wondering how fast it will be to knit up. I've heard it doesn't take very long at all because of course you're using big needles and it's mesh, so it, you know, it's not this tight knit fabric or anything. So I am curious as to how long it will take me to do. I think because I have so much of this and because the Look at My Holes sweater doesn't seem to take a lot of yardage, I'm wondering if I will have enough left over to make a similar colored tank to wear underneath it to be like matching. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. And this is the hypothetical portion of the podcast where I just talk to you about the things that I am hoping to get on the needles before the next time I see you. I have a whole queue of springy, summery things that I want to cast on. One of them is the Home Camisole. I believe that one's by Kadri, and I've been looking at that one for a while. I purchased it. I don't even remember. I think it was last year during the summer, and I just never ended up casting it on. And I'd really like to own that thing. I'd really like to have that thing. And so I am happy about my choices for sweaters at this point because I feel like they're going to be bleeding into spring well, that when I finish them, spring here in Indiana lasts a while. It's also in the summertime. I was actually talking to some of my British friends about this, and they were like, don't brag. And it was really funny because, like, of course, over there isn't air conditioning hardly anywhere. And in the States, it's everywhere. And it can get really, really hot here, which makes sense that if you're in degrees over 100 Fahrenheit, that you would want some air conditioning in your life. But then when you go out somewhere else, like there are places that are just notoriously cold and they feel really cold because you've been out in 100-degree weather and now you're going into like 68-degree weather and it feels cold. So I bring a cardigan with me everywhere during the spring and summer because it's just I'm constantly hot outside and then cold inside. And so I'm bringing cardigans with me whenever we're going out to dinner or we're going in the grocery store or anywhere because it's just freezing. So it feels that way. It's a regular temperature, but it feels that way. And so I'm really glad that these knits, I think the mandolin cardigan and the champagne cardigan are going to be really nice to have for a while until it gets into like the dog days of summer in August and things like that. And then I can pick them back up again. I think they'll be really good transitional pieces for the spring and the fall. And that means that I want to be casting on things for the spring and the summer. I'm often casting things on for the season that I'm actually in, not for the season that's upcoming. And I used to be frustrated by that because that means that I don't get to use it for very long before I have to put it away and don't get to use it again for another season or so. But I've realized that with the sweaters that I made last year, even though they were they all worsted weight sweaters? They may all have been, no, there were a couple of DKs in there and one fingering weight sweater, sport weight sweater, sorry. Even with them being mostly heavyweight sweaters, I wore them all the time. And then when the winter came back around, I was so thankful that I had them because I wore them daily. I wear my knits all the time. I wear my socks every day, like my knit socks every day. That's why I want more of them. And I'm determined not to give so many away because I want more for myself. But I've realized also that I almost always wear a camisole under my sweaters. Just because I like that feeling, not because my sweaters are super itchy, but I just like layers. And so I've been thinking that I'll probably get more use out of the spring and summer knits than I've been thinking I will, even if I do end up making them and only being able to wear them for a couple weeks before I have to put them away. I know that next year I'll be really thankful that they're there. I just really enjoy wearing things that I've knit, no matter what the season is. And honestly, when the weather warms up, I feel like I have to relearn how to dress myself. I have a really standard fall and winter apparel that I really like, but they are too hot for the summer specifically. And I am looking forward to having pieces that I've made that work for those seasons. So I am hoping that I can stave off the sweater bug by only casting on the sweater that I'm hopefully designing for my dad. And then the rest of them will be things for me that are garments that are for the spring and the summer. I have a couple of sock cast on ideas that I want to do. This one is a Happy Feet yarn, and this is the colorway 72. Don't really have names for theirs. This is a 90-10 merino nylon blend. I made a pair of, I had a sock tube sent off for a pair of socks with some Happy Feet yarn two Christmases ago. And I put heels and toes on them and then gave them to my mom for Christmas, and she loves them. And she said that she washes them every time she wears them. And I was like, Mom, you do know that you don't have to wash them every time because of like the microbial properties of the antimicrobial properties of wool. And she was like, no, I'm not doing that. I was like, okay. But she said that she is always really happy when they're done being washed because she puts them on immediately. And I thought, oh, well, she's going to wear those out pretty fast if that's how she's wearing them, because that's how I wore my first pair of socks. That I only had one pair of socks for myself for the first year that I knit them. So I'm going to make these for her. I'm hoping if I buckle down, I could get them done for Mother's Day. That's the dream. Maybe I could just show them to her too on Mother's Day and say, these are for you. I really like this yarn. I think it's going to knit up really neatly. I'm probably going to do some version of a ribbed sock, whether it's the Hermione Everyday socks or the Blueberry Waffle socks or the Library socks or just some broken rib sock. I think that would be really good for her. And this is one of the 5 sock yarn skeins that I have left over, full sock yarn skeins that I have left from 2022. I am wanting to continue pulling from that stash so that I can at some point just have some leftovers that I can piece together into other socks and have the yarn of 2022 kind of behind me. I don't think I'll be able to accomplish that with all of my yarn stash by the end of the year, but I think I could do it with the sock yarn that I have. I think I can make 5 pairs of socks and then just deal with what's left over by the end of the year. I think. Now, speaking of socks that are not from 2022, this is a impulse buy that I made. I believe it's the only purchase I made in April. And it was my birthday that month, so I think I did a good job of not going crazy. But this is called Carols in the Snow. This is a repeat offering from Tiny Human Knits. I've never used her yarn before. I watch her podcast a lot, and I really like her colorways. I really like her Lord of the Rings colorways that she's coming out with. And even the names, Potatoes is one of them. And yeah, it seems really great. Her yarn seems really great. This is a beautiful self-striping yarn, and I've seen it a couple of times, and I thought it's really beautiful. And I think the name Carols in the Snow is really accurate for the color, but I also think it looks kind of springy. I like that about different colors, that they can play to different times of year. So this was a 50-gram skein that I split up into 2 different balls, and I paid attention to the color repeats. So there's maybe 4 out of 5 colors in the color repeat in this business, because that was just what was left off the 50 grams after I split these up into the color repeats of these. And then this is the 20-gram mini that came with them. So I'm going to be doing cuffs and heels at the very least with these. And I know that I need 3 grams for a toe, so I'm going to see if I have enough of that, enough to do the toe with that when I get to that point, because I think that would be fun. I'm debating on whether I should do these socks toe up, because I'm usually a cuff down sock person. I am much more familiar with that, but I think one of the great parts of doing socks toe up is that you can just run out of yarn and then add a contrast yarn for your cuff. Like, that's just a thing that can happen, and that's okay. I believe that you can try them both on. You can try toe up socks on, you can try cuff down socks on. They're both try-onable. I've made a few toe up socks, and I really like using shadow wrap heels in those socks, so I've been thinking about doing that with these, and we shall see how that goes for me. I think these colorways are beautiful, and with a shadow wrap heel, it wouldn't make those stripes different widths. You can see with the heel flap and gusset here, it makes these stripes thinner that are right next to the gusset. I don't really mind that most of the time. Doesn't matter to me. I really like a heel flap and gusset construction. But I've been thinking about messing with toe-up socks more than I have in the past, and I think that'll be a really good idea for me. I also have lots of Newton that I got in the March collection, and I still haven't decided what to cast on with it. I really want to do something that would be appropriate for that yarn choice, like that I would be really pleased with it. So I would love to hear from y'all if you've used Newton before, what you really liked using it for. I think that would be lovely. And also, just let me know if you made it to the end of the podcast here. Leave me a little emoji. You know, I love to know who made it to the end. And I would love to hear what you're working on. Tag me on Instagram. Show me what's happening with you. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Hang on, hang on. There you go. Put it in the line. Sprinkle it in. Yeah, there you go.